Okay. Hey, now you're full. You're going to fall asleep. It's fine. That's why we do our potlucks after service, right? That's usually the better idea. Hey, I do want to throw this out there to you guys. So we want to get back into the mode of just having meals together, breaking bread, so to speak. So we figured that the best time slot to do that would be on Thursday nights, and we'll just start off with like once a month kind of a thing. So this works out perfectly because a month from tonight essentially is Good Friday. And so we'll do a Good Friday service, but we'll also center that around a meal as well, okay? So we do have Easter invite cards on the visitor center thingy, whatever that is, and it has like a schedule on there of like Good Friday service, Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and then Easter service. So if you want to take one of those, you can and pass it out, invite people. But and that's just kind of what we're going to start doing is Thursday, once a month on Thursday nights, we'll have a meal. And so and then to let you know as well, we're finishing Esther tonight, so we got a few chapters to cover, and it's going to be kind of a flyover. But after Esther, starting next week, we're going to do. I think there's a slide for it, but Heroes of the Faith it's all Hebrews chapter 11 is what we're going to cover. So typically Thursday nights are Old Testament, and if you've ever read Hebrews chapter 11, you know that the heroes pretty much mentioned in that chapter are all Old Testament saints. And so I thought it'd be kind of a cool little break for us before we segue into the next book. We'll go through Hebrews chapter 11, and we'll just spotlight each character. We'll spend a week or a Thursday night on each character. So Abraham, Isaac, Moses, I mean, you name it. We'll just go through that whole list. And it'll give you a good overview, so to speak, of some mainline biblical characters, okay? Then after that, I think we might go into 1 Samuel. So it's either 1 Samuel or Joshua. I'm still praying about it. I don't know. So two good ones. But anyways, so tonight we're in Esther chapter 8. Chapter 8, chapter 9, and chapter 10. 3 chapters. You're like, holy cow. Don't worry, it goes fast. We've already gone through this story, and traditionally on Purim, you'd read through the whole story. I don't have time for that. You can always go back when you go home. You can read the first 7 chapters if you want, but let me kind of catch you up. King Ahasuerus or Xerxes was... he's ruling the Persian Empire at that point in time. And he had a wife, her name was Queen Vashti, or Vashti, if you pronounce it that way. I don't know which one's right, but I say Vashti. So they had a party. They had a major 6-month-long party, and then it went to a week-long party with everybody within the kingdom, right? At first it was the elites, and then it's the commoners. And it was at this party that Xerxes asked Queen Vashti to come in and to display her beauty for all to see. And she wasn't having that, right? So she said, no, you're not supposed to do that, okay? And so she was booted out because his advisor said, look, if your wife does this, then our wives will start doing this. So we can't have that. So you need to make a law that says that all wives must submit to their husbands, okay? So Vashti got booted out. Then they did this search for the next queen, and then Esther, out of all the young ladies in the Persian Empire, the 127 provinces, she was selected. And so then she got picked to be the next queen. She's Jewish. Her cousin who raised her, Mordecai, he's obviously Jewish as well. He gets a position within the king's palace, all right? And then the bad guy shows up, Haman, right? Boo, we don't like that guy, okay? So Haman shows up. He gets promoted, and he's just as wicked as can be. And he hates Mordecai because Mordecai will not bow to him. And so he absolutely hates Mordecai. And he gets the king, Xerxes, to authorize a law where on a specific day, they rolled dice for it, right? The lots, they cast lots for it, Purim. And so on this specific day, the Jews would be executed. Not just Mordecai, but all Jews, okay? And so in the midst of all that, then Mordecai goes to Esther and he's like, look, you are where you're at this moment in time in history for this reason. You have to go to the king. And it could have cost her life, but Esther was bold. She went before the king, arranged a feast, then arranged another feast, and the other feast allowed Haman the opportunity to go to his home and seek counsel, wicked counsel from his wife and his close, associates. And they said, look, just build some gallows. Really, it's just one giant sharp stick, okay? And then just kill Mordecai, right? So he goes back. This is where we were last week. He goes back to the king, and he just so happens to show up in the morning where the king had spent all night, where he couldn't sleep, and he had the records read to him where it said where Mordecai saved his life. What have we done for this guy? We didn't do anything for him. So it just so happens that he seeks out advice from Haman. You know the story. Haman has to parade Mordecai all through the city, right? And doing to Mordecai what he himself wanted the most. And then he goes and he's in a bad mood, and his family is like, this isn't going to end well for you. Because if he's a Jew, obviously there's somebody on his side that's working for him. It's not going to work out too well for you. Second little celebration with Esther and Xerxes. That's when we discover Esther proclaims her nationality. I'm a Jew, and Haman wants to kill me and all my family. And Xerxes gets mad, loses it. Haman falls on Esther on the couch, begging, pleading for his life. And then he's marched out with a bag on his head, and he's executed. Okay, and then we are all happy about that, because it's nice when the bad guy loses and the good guys win, right? So that's where we're at. We get into chapter 8 now, where there's an issue. Just because the bad guy is dead doesn't mean all the problems are solved, because there's an old law that's still there. And the king cannot replace the old law, right? Because that's Persian, that's the Persian law. Once it's set, it's set. But you can make a new law to supersede the old one. And there's really cool parallels there for us. With the old law, Jesus fulfilled the law. Beautiful. And there's a new law, so to speak, that's been put in place. You can look at it like an old covenant and a new covenant kind of a thing. So chapter 8 is where we'll pick up. It says that same day, King Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes, gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, right? Not only did he end up being executed on his own execution device, his property, his estate, is given over to Queen Esther. It says the enemy of the Jews, that was Haman. Then Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had revealed how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. Esther then appointed Mordecai over Haman's estate. So Mordecai is now promoted to basically second in command in all of Persia, right? He is like the ambassador. It's Xerxes, and then now it's Mordecai. Isn't that amazing how God works? Isn't that so amazing how God works? Where there's this wicked person, and he's seeking the destruction of all these people. And then God he's so in control of everything. He takes out that guy, and then he promotes the faithful man, and the man who is very bold and very courageous in his faith and his devotion to God. So now he's over Haman's estate. Verse 3, it says, Esther then again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She pleaded with him to stop the evil of Haman the Agagite, right? Remember, that's his family lineage. He goes all the way back, connected to preceding Saul and how Saul was disobedient to God. In dealing with the Amalekites, but all the way back into technically into Genesis. But Haman, this is what he represented. This is who he was connected to. And his plan that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the golden scepter to Esther, and she arose and stood before the king. She said, if it pleases the king, and if I have found favor before him, and it seems right to the king, and if I am pleasing in his eyes, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hey, remember me? I won the beauty contest. If I'm found pleasing in his eyes, let an edict be written rescinding the dispatches devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. It's a hard word to say. Which he wrote to destroy the Jews who were throughout the king's provinces. For how can I endure seeing the disaster that will fall on my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my relatives? So here is Esther again. She's just begging and pleading just on behalf of her people. We have to do something. There has to be something. I like this because Esther's, she obviously not only has looks, but she's got brains too. She's very smart, very smart. She comes up with this plan. And they already know what's written is written, what is sealed, but a new law can be written. A new seal can be placed on this, and there's a clever plan that they come up with. But King Xerxes, Ahasuerus, says to Queen Esther in verse 7, and to Mordecai the Jew, I've decided to give Haman's estate to Esther and had him hanged on the gallows because he stretched out his hand against the Jews. Now write in the king's name on behalf of the Jews what seems good to you and seal it with the king's signet ring. For a decree that is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring cannot be revoked. We know this. But he's giving them free run. Like, he already did that with Haman, and that was, like, not such a good idea, right? And here he is again. He's like, well, I don't know. Again, remember, this king is not really a good leader, okay? Because if it comes down to very delicate matters such as this, people's lives, you can't just delegate that. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think we should do? Save them. How about that? Like, you're the ruler. Do something. But he entrusts Esther and Mordecai, which I'm glad he did, because God has given them wisdom in how to solve this problem. But he gives them his ring. He gives them the ability to write up a new law, what they think is best, and then to seal it. And it's as good as if he himself has done it. Verse 9. So the king's scribes were called at that time on the 23rd day of the third month, the month of Sivan. Sorry, I was practicing earlier, and that was one that I forgot to practice. There you go. We'll call it March. How's that? It was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to all the Jews, as well as to the officials, governors, and advisors of all the 127 provinces that stretched from India to Ethiopia. Huge empire. To each province, it was written in its own script and in its own language, and also to the Jews in their own writing and language. This decree was written in the name of King Ahasuerus, sealed with the king's signet ring, and sent on horseback by couriers who rode on the king's horses, specially bred for their speed. This is that postal system that the Persians had came up with. That was absolutely brilliant, and it was the best. It was the best, to be found anywhere at this moment in time within history. They had a great postal system. Like I said before, they were Amazon Prime before Amazon Prime, right? Like, you wanted something to go out, they could get it out for you. What's really cool about this is almost like an illustration for us, because they are carrying good news. They're carrying good news. And you can tell, it doesn't even have to tell us, because you can sense, you can feel the urgency in the matter. They needed to get the good news out as far out as possible and as quickly as possible. Guess what, guys? We're on that same mail squad as well. It's God's, and he's given us the good news. And he's saying, hey, how about you tell people about the good news? There's bad news. That's what makes good news, is the fact that there is bad news. Bad news, we're sinners, and there's a price to pay. If we don't want to take and receive his free gift of salvation, then we must account for that ourselves. That's how it goes. That's the bad news. You're born a sinner. Sorry, we may not like that, but that's the news. That's how it is. It's not fake news either. It's actually real news. It's true. But there's good news, and we carry the message, the good news. How swift are we getting out there? Do we take it the same way? Put yourself back here in this day and imagine that you are Jewish, and you got family that's out there. You got friends that are out there. How quickly are you going to hop on that horse's back and get to them as fast as possible? The bad news is, everybody already knew about the bad news. Remember when it was signed with the signet ring by Haman, even the people in Susha, in the capital there in Persia, they were very troubled by this news because they didn't want their Jewish friends to die. There was no sense in that. So that was the bad news that got out there. And now there's just this urgency that's there of like, we have to get this message out as quickly as possible and to as many people as possible. And you can just tell that, I mean, these guys they have specific horses, and these are horses especially bred for their speed to get the message out as quick as possible. 127 provinces that stretch from India to Ethiopia. Amazing. And they got basically, I think it's around 8 months to get the word out. Why? Because death is coming. Because death is coming. We don't know when the Lord Jesus is coming back. We know he's coming back. We feel like that's soon. So the urgency should be that much more within our hearts. He's given us special horses, so to speak. You have the good news. Each and every one of us has the good news. We've all been entrusted with this beautiful message of life. It's just, are we going to hop on those horses and run, you know? That's up to us. And the cool thing about the day and age in which we live is we can do that in various forms. And what's nice about like live streaming, you can live stream stuff out there. Radio, you can put stuff on radio and all that good stuff. And that's fine. There's an audience for that. There's a reach for that. But I think there's a greater audience and a greater reach when we just, as individuals, just wake up each and every day saying, all right, Lord, I got the message. Who do you want me to deliver it to today? We need to be bold. We need to ask, that question to God every single day. And that's a scary thing to ask because sometimes we don't really want to talk to other people, right? It's intimidating. But man, what we're dealing with is life and death. What we're dealing with is eternity. Eternity. And I can just imagine the king, he's like, seal it with my ring, and I'm going to provide you with the best postal service, the best delivery service known around, this region so that we get this message out to as many people as possible as quickly as possible. There's a lot of good lessons for us to learn as Christians, even from the Old Testament. That's the cool thing about this whole Bible. It's so beautiful. It's amazing. And even in here, it's like, yeah, good practical application point. Get out there. You got the good news. Go share it with people. Share it with people. Ask God to give you divine appointments. Ask him to give you the right words to say. Ask him to give you the boldness to take a step out there. Just go for it. Verse 11. The king granted the right for Jews in every city to assemble themselves and protect themselves. Here you go, to destroy, to kill, to annihilate. The exact same wording from Haman's law, right? To kill, destroy, annihilate, to protect yourself. Any army of any people or province that might attack them and their women and their children, and to plunder their possessions. He's given them the right to fight back. It's like, okay, we can't change the law, but here's what we can do. I'll make it a law that you guys have every single right and you'll be protected to fight back. It's like, all right, so now the playing field has been leveled, right? So now it's not just like, well, we have to try to survive on this day. Oh no, now we have time to bear arms and we can stand our own ground. It says the day appointed for all this, for this in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus was the 13th day in the 12th month in the month of Adar. A copy of the written edict was distributed in every province and made known to the peoples of every nationality so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers that rode royal horses raced out, pressed on by the king's command. You and I have a king's command as well. Right? King Jesus. The decree was also given out at the palace of Shushan. Then Mordecai went out from the king's presence in blue and white royal robes. Pretty cool, right? Blue and white. That's our stage lighting today, if you didn't notice. Blue and white. Also because we're celebrating Purim. And Israel. I love Israel. And blue and white. And here's Mordecai. He's like, got this sweet blue and white robes. Good for you, Mordecai. I'll never wear robes, okay? Just by the way. Never, ever will I wear a robe, okay? I don't know how guys preach in those things or anything. It just looks, I don't know, whatever. That's a rabbit hole. Says he's got a large gold crown and also a purple robe of fine linen. The city of Shushan shouted and rejoiced. For the Jews, there was a light and gladness, joy and honor. Proverbs tells us that when a righteous man rules, the people, there's a freedom, there's a celebration that happens, right? When the wicked rules, it's not so good, is it? It's not. When Haman was in charge, so to speak, the people they didn't like that. But now Mordecai is put in his position, and the people celebrate that. Throughout every province and throughout every city, wherever the king's edict and his law went, the Jews had gladness and joy, banquets and holidays. Many peoples of the land became Jews because the fear of the Jews had overcome them. They're like, I'm Jewish too. That could be because of all the parties and celebrations. No, they're like, we want to identify with you guys. It seems like your God is with you, and so we want to be on your team. It's kind of the thought process there. But that's a cool thing. That's a really cool thing. That should also be an encouraging thing as well. You don't have to become Jewish. You're a Christian. You're a Christ follower with the gospel. Go out and tell people about the gospel. And wouldn't it be awesome if the people that you're sharing with or the people that are watching your lives say, you know what? I think I want to follow Christ. I think I want to be a Christian. They probably would do that more if we celebrated more. Christians are too much of the Ebenezer Scrooge type, right? The bah humbug people of the world. Bah humbug. We don't do that. We don't like that. We don't like that. We don't like that. And it's like, do you like anybody? Do you like doing anything? Do you like celebrating? Aren't you on the winning side? Why don't we act like it? Maybe more people would be attracted to this thing if we just actually celebrated a little bit more. I'm not saying we, just ignore life's difficulties and all that good stuff. Not at all. But I think you understand what I'm talking about. We are connected to Jesus. We win. He won. We win. Eternity, new heaven, new earth. Every single reason to celebrate. Every single reason to be joyful, to be glad. And as we're dropped in this little world for such a time as this, surrounded by people who may not have hope, do they identify with us as people who should have all the hope in the world, but yet we walk around as hopeless ones? Or do they see something in us that's like, I want what you have. I want what you have. That was the greatest witness for me. I shared this with you guys before. Nobody ever shared the gospel with me. Nobody ever shared the gospel with me when I was unsaved. Not verbally, but they certainly did live it out. And I was around kids my age in a youth group where they were just so weird and so different. But their weirdness and their difference was the fact that they were joyful and they had hope and they had peace and they actually loved. And I was so opposite of that. And I remember I'm an observer. That's who I am. And so a whole year, I only had a year basically church experience, I'll say, a little bit as a kid, but voluntarily only about a year of church experience. And I just watched people. I just watched them. But I watched them live out this witness, and I watched them display these traits and these things, these characteristics that I was like, I want what you have. What they had was Jesus. What I was missing was Jesus. That was the greatest witness for me. So I can speak on behalf of maybe some of those who are closely connected to you, who are not Christ followers. They're watching you. You don't have to live a perfect life, and please don't pretend to live a perfect life, because then you'll be a hypocrite, okay? You don't have it all together. Your life, the sun's not going to shine every single day in your life, right? We know that. If you're going through a difficult time, you go through a difficult time, but you can still have joy in the midst of the trials and the storms, right? People who are on the outside are looking at you to see, like, is this thing real? Is this thing real? I was one of those people. And what won me over was, man, this thing is real. Because I watched them go through hard times. I watched some of my friends go through difficult times where it's like, if that happened to me, man, I don't know what I would have done. But somehow they had joy that surpassed their circumstances. People are watching, and what's cool about this story is even the people within Persia, even if they all weren't Persians, so to speak, but they were watching the Jews in the midst of a very, very crazy storm that they found themselves in. And the Jews are celebrating. They're rejoicing. And they got banquets and holidays, and they're just celebrating. And the people are watching are like, I want to be in on that. I want some of that. And who wouldn't want that? Verse 9, chapter 9, my bad, chapter 9. Consequently, on the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, the king's edict and his law drew near to be carried out. On that day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them. So even though there's a new law, the enemy is still looking to fulfill the old law, okay? That's something to be aware of as a Christian, okay? Even though there's the law and all that good stuff, and listen, you're still going to battle. The fight is not over, right? We ultimately have won, so to speak, but there's still battles to be fought. And the enemy is prepared. It says they hope to overpower them, but contrary to their expectations, or to the expectations of the Jews, gained an upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their city throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus in order to lay hands on those seeking their harm. I like that term, lay hands, right? Like, you think of it as like praying. I think of it as like laying hands. Like when we talked about laying hands on people growing up, it was always with fist. I didn't know anything about laying hands on people praying. So I think this one is more of like the laying hands on, like how I grew up with fist. So they are gaining the upper hand on these. It says, no one was able to stand against them, for fear of them had fallen on all the peoples, even all the administrators of the provinces, the governors, the officers, the governors, and those doing business for the king helped the Jews. For the dread of Mordecai, fascinating, huh? The dread of Mordecai had fallen on them. Mordecai was prominent at the palace, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. The man Mordecai was growing ever more powerful. That's awesome. That's awesome. We've watched this journey of Mordecai, where he got his first government position and all that good stuff, and then it seemed like he was getting promoted. He was sitting at the gates, the city gates, and then he gets promoted into Haman's position. But here, this is a good testimony of just a godly man. And men, be godly. Hey, men, be men. Be godly men. Stand up. When times are difficult, who was the one person who stood up was Mordecai. When the law went out and death was pronounced on all the people, on all the Jews, the one who stood up was Mordecai. He convinced Esther to be bold and to be courageous, and she did that. And Esther is amazing. She's an amazing woman of God, absolutely. What she did was completely brave and admirable. But you have to give credit to Mordecai for being this Jewish man who stood up when nobody else was standing up. And that's another good application point for us men within the church. Men, be men of God. Be bold. Be courageous. Stand when nobody's standing. Stand when nobody's standing. Stand for the gospel. Be fighters of the faith. We can't pass that off to the women anymore. Ladies, you're amazing. You're awesome. the sad reality of church is more ladies show up to church than guys do. And I love that, but that's troublesome. That's troublesome. That's troublesome for families. I like when we go through these stories and it's like, man, there's a hero of the faith and her name is Esther. But there's also a hero of the faith and his name is Mordecai. And isn't it cool that God can use an Esther and a Mordecai side by side to fight for his people? We need more Esthers. We need more Mordecais in the church. It's just true. We live in days like this. And there were thousands of Jews that lived in Persia, and only one Jewish man stood up for what was right. And because of that, the one Jewish lady stood up alongside him, and they did the unspeakable. I mean, they faced death on behalf of their people. I love that. I love that about this story. It's just incredible. Like, hopefully that kind of pumps you up a little bit to where it's like, yes, be brave. Be brave. What's the worst that could happen to you? The worst that could possibly happen to you is that you die. But that's the best thing that could possibly happen to you. And I know that's weird to say. I don't want any of you to die, okay? But I'm saying as Christians, we have to take a step back from this self-idolization that is a big problem in our country. We are so afraid of dying. We want to hold on to our lives. And I get it. I don't want to die. I get it. I understand that. But man, when that gets in the way of being bold and courageous for the gospel, that's a problem. It's a problem. So I'm not saying be foolish and go out there and pick a fight. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying people are dying and eternity is on the line. We got to figure out what's important to us. My eternity's set. I know where I'm going. I know what happens next for me. I shouldn't have to worry about that. So now my heart should be for other people who don't know where they're going, right? I love that. Just Mordecai, he's growing. I mean, the reason why he's growing, it's kind of like Joseph. The reason why he's being promoted and his fame, so to speak, is expanding is because he is faithfully devoted to God. And that's it. Verse 5, the Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying, and they did whatever they wished to those who had hated them. All right, don't follow that model. We don't need to kill anybody. Praise God, those days are done. I think. I don't know. Anyways, share the gospel. Not the sword, share the gospel, okay? Right now, right? It says in the citadel at Shushan, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 people. Isn't it amazing that there are still 500 people who are like, yeah, I think I'm going to kill the Jews, right? And they're like, wait, what? He just gave them permission to fight back. And they're like, yeah, I still kind of want to kill them, though. So you're like, you're nuts. But we know who they're connected to. Some of them, anyways. Pershandatha, this is going to be brutal. I'm not worried about these guys being in heaven and correcting me, though, so it's cool. Adelia, Aridatha, Parmashta, Arasai, Aradai. This was the one that was tripping me up last night. Vizatha, I think that's how you say it. The 10 sons of Haman, the sons of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews. They slew them, but they did not lay their hands on their plunder. They had the right to. It was written in the law. They could kill them, and then they could take whatever they wanted. But the Jews were like, we're better than our enemies. The enemy's plan was to kill, steal, destroy, annihilate, basically. The Jews are like, we'll fight for ourselves. We will absolutely defend ourselves. But we don't need your stuff. We're not going to take your stuff. That's an impressive thing here. Verse 11, it says, on that day, the number of those that were killed at the citadel of Shushan was brought to the king's attention. Then the king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men in the citadel of Shushan, including Haman's 10 sons. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, so that's the question he asked. We'll get an update on that in a second. What is your request? It shall be granted to you. What other petition do you have? It shall be done. Verse 13, Esther says, if it please the king, let the Jews in Shushan be allowed to carry out today's edict tomorrow also, and let Haman's sons be hanged on the gallows. They're dead, but let's stick them up on the poles maybe as a good lesson, right? Like, don't mess with the Jews. I don't know. But those same kind of gallows that their dad died on, they would now be hung on as well. The king commanded that this be done. A decree was issued in Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. The Jews in Shushan gathered together on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they killed 300 men in Shushan. There's still more. They still wanted to fight, but they did not put their hands on the plunder. Meanwhile, the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces gathered together to protect themselves and to get relief from their enemies. They killed 75,000 of their enemies. That's crazy. Again, I'm thinking like, man, did word not get around to what was happening in the capital? Like, don't mess with the Jews. Don't mess with them. 75,000 of these guys are like, yeah, I think we could take them. Okay. But they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Verse 17, this happened the 13th day of Adar, and on the 14th day they rested, making a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were in Shushan had assembled on the 13th and on the 14th and on the 15th they rested, making it a day of feasting and gladness. That is why the rural Jews, the country Jews, right, those living in unwalled villages make the 14th day of the month of Adar a day of gladness and feasting, a day of sending presents of food to one another. What a cool holiday. Why do we not celebrate this more often, right? You're like, okay, I mean, it's an amazing, you get to get together with friends and family, you get to eat food. We're like, yeah, we do that. Christmas, Thanksgiving, yeah, but here's the other thing. You also give gifts to the poor and to the needy. It's kind of an outreach holiday. It's not an in-reach. Christmas is in-reach, right? It's all about like, I get some stuff, I give some stuff to my family and all that, but it kind of stays within the family. Purim is more of an outreach kind of focused holiday. Hey, send some presents to your friends. Send some food to your friends, right? Like give them some Grubhub or whatever. Send them a meal. Take care of, you see somebody who's poor or needy or whatever, hook them up. Take care of them. This is an amazing holiday. I think this is one that we should put on our calendars on a regular basis. Why not? Anyways, so this is what they're doing. They're celebrating. And here's the description of Purim, this last little bit here. Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews throughout the province of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, urging them to celebrate the 14th and 15th days of Adar every year as the days when the Jews got relief from their enemies, and as the month when their sorrow was turned into joy and their mourning into celebration. That sounds a lot like what happened to us when we got saved. That sounds like every day in my life when I wake up and roll out of bed. I don't always have sorrow, but if I do, isn't it amazing that our sorrow can be turned into joy, that our mourning can be turned into celebration because of Jesus? It's amazing. This is the coolest thing. I mean, this is like the new celebration, the new, like, this isn't like law for them to celebrate, right? This is kind of an optional one, so to speak. Passover, they're required to celebrate it. Purim, they're not required to, but why wouldn't you want to celebrate it when you think of all that entails it and the reasons behind it? So Mordecai is sending out this letter to all the Jews, encouraging them to celebrate these, what the Lord has done. It says these were to be a day of feasting, celebration, sending presents of food to one another, and giving gifts to the poor. That's Purim. That's what it's about. So the Jews agreed to continue the commemoration they had begun, and to do what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had schemed against the Jews to destroy them and had cast the pur, right? Remember pur, that's the lots there. That is the lot, to ruin and destroy them. But when it came to the king's attention, he issued a written edict that the wicked scheme of Haman, Haman had devised against the Jews, should come back on his own head, right? And the king might be issuing these things and all that stuff, but please know that the way that the dice ended up was because God is in control. He gave him a year. He gave him a year. It's beautiful how the Lord can control the dice. And remember, I encourage you, probably don't go to the casinos and play the craps table, okay? And just be like, all right, Lord, I'm trusting you with these dice. If you're hoping for 7-Eleven, you're going to get snake eyes, okay? I'm just saying, it might be a good lesson in humility or dependence on God. Who knows? Maybe he'll help you win. I don't know. But I just think that thankful that he controlled these dice on this day, right? So I don't care what Ahasuerus or Xerxes is. He may think he's in control, but he's not in control. He's not in control, okay? God is in control. It says that he, written this, that it all gone back onto Haman's head, and it did, that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows, and they were. For this reason, these days were called Purim, from the word pur. Therefore, because everything in this letter and because of what they had seen and what had happened to them, the Jews established and took upon themselves, upon their descendants, upon all who had joined with them, that they would commemorate these 2 days in the way prescribed. And at the appointed time every year, these days should be remembered and observed by every generation, by every family, and in every province and every city. These days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor their remembrance perish from their descendants. Remember what God did. Remember what God did. Then Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, and also Mordecai, the Jew, wrote with full authority to confirm the second letter of Purim. He sent letters to all the Jews in 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with the words of shalom and truth, peace and truth. Peace and truth. To establish these days of Purim at their designated times, just as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had decreed for them, and just as they had established for themselves and their descendants, matters regarding their times of fasting and lamentations. Esther's command confirmed these regulations about Purim, and it was written into the records. Last little bit, all of chapter 10, it's like 3 verses. It says, now King Ahasuerus imposed a tribute upon the entire land, even to the coastlands of the sea. All the acts of his power and might, along with the full account of the greatness of Mordecai and the story of how the king promoted him, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Media and Persia? Meaning this, you can document this story in extra biblical resources. You can find that this story is actually historically accurate and true. You're like, I don't know if the Bible is, well, the Bible is accurate and true. But if you need some more confirmation concerning maybe just Purim or the story of Esther and Mordecai, well, you can find that in Persian history. They documented it. And you can look it up even today. You can find that, yeah, this is real. This actually happened. It says, for Mordecai, the Jew, verse 3, was second only to King Ahasuerus, preeminent among the Jews, and held in high esteem by the multitude of his people. He sought their good and spoke for the welfare of his descendants. And that's the coolest thing. Here's a faithful man serving God, never wavered in his faith, in his devotion to God. And God honored that. He blessed this guy tremendously. And yet, the story of Esther is, well, it's not just about Esther. And the story of Esther is not just about Mordecai. The story of Esther, believe it or not, is about God. It's about God. And I don't care if the term, his name, is not mentioned in here. You can read between the lines to see that God is in control, man. He is sovereign. He is absolutely sovereign. And he knows how to take care of his people. He knows how to take care of his people. And if you don't believe that, read Revelation. Read what happens to the Jews. In the end of it all, are they not preserved and taken care of by God? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You and I have the opportunity to be taken care of by God, who is our Father, our Heavenly Father. He takes care of his kids. He takes care of those who belong to him. And it may seem as though it's like you're waiting till the last moment, Lord, because, there's a whole year when the lots were cast. And it seems like this is pretty last minute that this new law is written. He's like, no, it's written at the right time.